Our reading from Hebrews 9, 1 to 10 describes for us the tabernacle, the Old Testament tabernacle. And it's in some ways hard to visualize what's described there. But we've got a picture we're going to project to try and help us to do that this morning. There is a picture of the tabernacle as it's described, the place where the people of Israel would go to meet with God under the old system. The old covenant was set up when Moses brought the people of Israel out of Egypt and into the wilderness. God gave them instructions of how they were to meet with him. And that's what's described. And I'd just like us to focus on that and some of the details quickly this morning that are mentioned in there. There are two parts to it. The bit that is to our left, going that way, furthest from me, that is what's called the holy place. And moving upwards, more towards me, there's a second chamber, the most holy place. Let's think about what's in the holy place. The things that are mentioned as being there, we could just see on the far left-hand side, the lampstand. The lampstand distinctive with its 7 branches, made out of gold, the most precious metal, shaped as it is like a tree. Well, what was it symbolizing? It was symbolizing sort of light and life there in the holy place. And that's where the priests will go in to meet with God. And then it mentions having a table there. And on the table were what's called the Sacred Loaves. And there would have been 12 of these loaves placed daily out. And what's it symbolizing? Well, this holy place is where God is giving light and life. And, well, 12 loaves of bread, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel, for all the people God is providing. So we've got the holy place there. Then in the higher part, moving further in, we've got the most holy place. Now, what's described as being in there is firstly the golden incense altar. In this passage, it says in the most holy place. It probably would not have been in the most holy place, but it's described as being in there here as, well, the incense is representing the prayers of the people coming up to God, the prayers coming to God. So they're saying it's as if it's in the most holy place where the people of Israel perceived as God as dwelling. So that's their God, people approaching and their prayers being heard. And what also is described in there is the Ark of the Covenant. Now, all of us will have heard of the Ark of the Covenant, either from our knowledge of Scripture or maybe from watching Hollywood. Just click onto the next slide. We've all seen things like this, you know, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Those who are nodding, it's aging us, I will admit. So we'll go back to looking at the tabernacle. We just change the slide again. There we go. But the Ark, all Indiana Jones and all that great fiction, but the reality is there was the Ark of the Covenant, a real thing. And in that Ark, in that gold-covered special box that was carried around by the people of Israel, always placed in the most holy place in the temple, we're told that in there was Aaron's rod that budded. Numbers chapter 17 tells the story of how when the people of Israel moved out of Egypt and then were traveling around the desert, they became discontented with what God had set up. And, well, at one point they'd argued, why is Moses leading us? And then they said, why are the priests the priests? And in number 17, we've got the story of how they were instructed, every tribe of the 12 tribes was to bring a branch or a rod and leave it in the temple overnight. They left it in the temple. And in the morning, the one that Aaron had brought from the tribe of Levi had budded, it blossomed, it was there, life had come to it. God was signaling very clearly, that tribe of Levi, they are the ones I want to be priests. And that had been preserved in the Ark of the Covenant. Also in the Ark of the Covenant there was a golden pot with manna. Manna, that's what fed the people through the wilderness when they came out of Egypt, were traveling in the desert. What did they eat? God provided manna every day for the people to gather up and eat. So kept was a pot of that, reminding the people of how God had provided for them. And of course, what we always think of in the Ark of the Covenant were the tablets of the commandments, God's instructions of how God's people were to live with God. So if we go back and we would project up this picture of the tabernacle again, what we've got is a picture of a God who provides. We've got a holy place where the priests were coming in, and then we've got the most holy place, which really emphasizes how much God provided. And in that most holy place, it's not shown on our picture here, but we're told that there were the cherubim, great big ornaments of cherubim-like creatures with huge wings, but either side, the wings going over the Ark of the Covenant, heavenly beings depicted, if you like, showing that most holy place, that's, if you like, is the heavens where God is dwelling. So we've got a picture of God who's given instructions to his people, who's provided for his people, and who has made a way in setting up this priesthood for people to come to him. But between the two, cutting off that most holy place, is the veil. The veil, and the veil separated it. And though the priests were coming into the holy place, they were reminded constantly of a God who cares and provides and does everything for them. Only the high priest once a year was able to go into the most holy place, was allowed to go through the veil. And what our passage tells us is all this is an illustration of the present time. All this serves as an illustration of just how much Christ has done for us. Think for a moment about what's going on there. God had made a way through the priesthood he'd established for people to come in, but the access was restricted. There was the imagery of these two rooms, and the only person allowed into the most holy place was the high priest, and that only once a year. So all their religious activities, all the following the instructions they were to do, it gave them this restricted access. What do we know about Christ and what he did? In Matthew chapter 27, we've got the description of how Christ died on the cross. And what we're told there in verses 50 and 51 is that the moment Christ died on the cross, that veil, if we put the picture up again, that veil in the temple that cut off the holy place where people were trying to get to, from the most holy place where restricted access was given a high priest once a year, that veil was torn open from top to bottom. It gives a wonderful image of God tore it open. Restricted access was over. The people could come in. Have you ever wondered why the only religious symbol image in this church is the cross? Look around. The only religious symbol in this church is the cross. We've got a cross there on the table. We've got a big wooden cross in the corner. Some old churches, the building was built in the shape of the cross. because the cross is what the Christian faith is all about. When Christ died on that cross, the veil in the temple was torn open. Restricted access was over. The old system, if we go back to the picture of the tabernacle, just so we can keep it in our minds. The old system also only offered partial cleansing. We're told in our passage that the priest went into the holy place once a year. And when the high priest went in, he offered sacrifices for his own sins, as well as for the sin of the people, because he needed to be made right. But he did it every year. Every year he had to do the same. So they would go in, they'd make the sacrifice and make the offering so they could be clean and go into God. But they know that next year they'd have to do it again, not only for the people, but also the high priest himself. How do you think that would have made him feel? We're going into God, we've been made clean, but we know next year we're going to have to go through the whole process again. There was only partial cleansing. There would be a permanent feeling of guilt. I've got to be made clean again in order to go to God. Our children over the summer recess have been watching the film The Pilgrims Progress, based on the wonderful old book by John Bunyan. We've been serializing it for them. It's a great story. And in that story, you've got a Christian who's leaving the city of destruction where he lived, and he's moving out to find a new and a better life. But Christian, as he sets off, has a heavy burden on his back, a load he carries. The wonderful imagery in the book, Bunyan got it just right. And he carries this burden all the way till he gets to the cross. And when he gets to the cross, he looks at the cross, and suddenly that burden of his back falls away. Great story, great imagery. And it's got this point exactly. There was only partial cleansing in the old system because they had to go back and be made clean again. But when we come to Christ, the burden of the wrong that we do, that we carry, comes away, falls off, and it's gone forever. What we also see in our passage is that this old system of the old tabernacle, that God set up to illustrate our need to be able to come to him, it only offered limited pardon. Did anybody spot verse 9? Verse 9, it said this, and he, that's the high priest, always offered blood for his own sins and for the sins that people had committed in ignorance. It covered all the wrong that they'd done when they didn't know it was wrong. Now that's very nice, but it's not good enough, is it? We all need forgiveness for those times when we've done wrong and we've been known we've been doing wrong. There was no forgiveness for that under this old system. It specifically says that the people had committed in ignorance. There's no provision for, I know God says that, but actually on this occasion, I'm not going to bother. I'm going to break the rules. Again, that's very different in terms of what Christ has done for us. The story that I always find most encouraging is, again, when Jesus was dying on the cross, given to us in Luke's Gospel, chapter 23, verses around about 42. We've got Jesus being crucified on the cross, and either side of him were two criminals, convicted because they'd done wrong. And one of them hurls insults at Jesus, and the other one rebukes him, and he says, don't you fear God? We're under the same condemnation, but we are justly being punished for the wrong we've done. There's no doubt they were guilty. They'd done things and they knew they'd done them wrong. And that one who'd rebuked the other turns to Jesus and says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And how did Jesus reply? I assure you, today you will be with me in paradise. Jesus on the cross pardons wrong, not just the wrong that we've done in ignorance because we didn't quite understand, we didn't get the commandments, but all those wrongs that we've done where we know we've been doing wrong and we know we should have been punished for it. The forgiveness is there by Jesus on the cross. And the temple gave an imperfect picture of living with God. We just go back to that image on the screen if we can. There we've got it. The people were doing all that they could to come to God and were getting into the holy place. But the veil cut off the most holy place. We rejoice because in Christ we've got that perfect access to come to God through what Christ did on the cross. And this morning our whole purpose is to give thanks to God for the way in which he's seen us through the difficulties of the last 18 months or more, and to trust God to see us on through all the challenges that we know we're going to face in the months and years ahead. What we see so encouraging in this passage is that we are not restricted from God. God who's always cared for, always guided, always provided his people, has made a perfect way for us to come to him without restriction, so that we can live with him. And the future that we can face walking with him.